Tessa Thorne yanked open the heavy glass door of the café and stepped into the scent of burnt espresso and cinnamon buns. Blinking hard against the sting in her eyes, she wasn't going to cry. Not here. Not over another rejection. The barista barely glanced at her when she stepped to the counter. "What can I get you?" "Just water," she muttered. She didn't even need water. She needed to breathe. Her heart still pounded from the interview, or more specifically, from being dismissed with a tight smile and a thank you for your time from a man who clearly hadn't read her resume. She turned to find a seat, but the place was packed. Of course. She was about to leave when a voice called out, deep and warm, "You can take my spot." She looked up. A man stood near the back wall, lifting a little boy out of a booster seat with one arm while holding a tray with the other. The kid looked about 5, with a mop of curly brown hair and a waffle in one hand. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Sure. We're done anyway." "Aren't we, buddy?" The boy nodded, his cheeks stuffed full of syrup-covered waffle. "We got soccer, Daddy." "Right," the man said with a tired smile, setting the tray down and helping the kid with his coat. Tessa hesitated. "Thank you." "No problem. You look like you needed it more than me." She sat down, watching them for a second. The man was tall, broad shoulders, worn jeans, faded hoodie. His boots had seen better days. He looked like he worked with his hands, but his voice was gentle when he spoke to the boy. She didn't mean to say anything. She really didn't. But it came out anyway. "Do you always give up your table for strangers?" He turned back to her, surprised. "Only the ones who look like they just got run over by a bus." She blinked, then laughed softly. "That obvious, huh?" "Little bit." He walked back over, the kid tugging on his arm. "I'm Victor. This is my son, Vaughn." "Tessa." "You okay, Tessa?" he asked. Not in the way most people did, not out of politeness or expectation. He asked like he actually wanted to know. She looked down at her hands. "I bombed an interview. Big one. I thought it could change everything." Victor glanced at Vaughn, then crouched down to zip up the boy's jacket. "Let me guess. You rehearsed every question. Bought a new outfit. Told yourself not to get your hopes up, but secretly did anyway." Her head snapped up. "How did you?" "Because I've been there. Not with interviews. With jobs. I used to work construction until the company folded. Been picking up odd jobs since. That's why I'm in here, needed somewhere warm to kill time before soccer." She stared at him. "You ever notice how the people who work the hardest are the ones who get kicked down the most?" he added. Tessa swallowed. "Every day." Victor smiled then. "Well, you're still standing. That's something." She didn't know why it hit her so hard. Maybe because he didn't pity her. Maybe because no one had said anything kind to her in days. But something cracked open in her chest. "I really needed to hear that," she said quietly. Victor looked at her for a beat. "We'll leave you to your water. Good luck, Tessa." She watched him go, watched him lift Vaughn onto his hip and carry him out into the cold. A poor dad with a warm smile. That shouldn't have stayed with her. But it did. 3 days later, she saw him again. She was walking through the park, scarf wrapped tight around her neck, trying to clear her head. Her company, her late father's company, was in the middle of a massive acquisition. She'd gone undercover to interview at one of the branches, wanting to understand the people they were hiring better. No one had recognized her as Tessa Thorne, the heiress. That was the point. But something about that rejection had shaken her, not just because it was unfair, but because Victor had been the only moment of real in it. And now here he was. On the soccer field, kneeling beside Vaughn, tying his cleats while the other kids kicked a ball around. Tessa stopped at the edge of the grass. "You again," Victor said without missing a beat. "You remember me." Hard to forget someone who looked like a tornado hit them in a pantsuit. She laughed. "Fair. What brings you to the park?" "I needed a walk." He stood up, brushing grass from his jeans. You always walk in $300 boots. Her eyes widened. How do you know how much they cost?
I don't, he said.
But they look like the kind that don't belong in mud. She bit back a smile. You always this charming? Only when I don't have to be. They stood there for a second, the wind tugging at her coat. Want to sit? He asked, nodding toward the bleachers. She hesitated, but nodded. They sat in silence for a minute, watching Vaughn chase the ball.
He's good, she said.
Victor's eyes softened. He's my whole world. Does his mom? Left a few years ago. Couldn't handle the struggle. Don't blame her. Just wasn't for her.
Tessa looked at him.
You're doing a good job. He glanced at her. Thanks. That means a lot. Especially from someone who wears boots worth more than my rent. She flushed. I didn't mean I'm teasing. He nudged her shoulder. She smiled. You ever get that job? He asked. She hesitated.
No.
But I think I found something better. Yeah. A reminder that not everything has to be perfect to be good. Victor looked at her, really looked at her this time. And she felt something shift. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't pity.
It was
connection. Come to Vaughn's next game, he said suddenly. If you want. She blinked. Really?
Yeah.
He liked you.
And
I like talking to you. She smiled. Okay.
I'd like that.
He stood, brushing off his hands. It's Saturday. Same field. I'll be there. And she meant it. That Saturday, she wore jeans and sneakers and brought hot chocolate for all the kids. She sat beside Victor, cheering for Vaughn. And afterward, when the field emptied and the sun dipped low, he turned to her. I don't know what your story is, he said, but I like who you are. Tessa looked up at him, heart pounding. Same goes for you. He searched her face. I'm not rich. I don't have much to offer. She stepped closer. You offer me kindness when I needed it most. That's worth more than anything. Victor swallowed hard. I'm not used to having someone like you around.
Then get used to it, she said.
And he smiled. She didn't tell him who she was. Not yet. But she knew, without a doubt, this was the beginning of something real. Victor shifted his weight on the bleacher bench, elbow resting on his knee as Vaughn darted across the field in pursuit of the ball. Tessa sat beside him, bundled in a navy coat, her knees drawn slightly together, still holding the paper cup he'd handed her earlier. It had gone cold, but she hadn't moved to throw it away. He glanced at her as Vaughn scored a goal and did a clumsy cartwheel in celebration. She laughed, not politely, not reserved, but the kind of laugh that warmed the air around them. I think that was supposed to be a somersault, she said.
Victor rubbed his jaw.
That's generous. Last week he attempted a backflip and landed on his face. Ambition, she said. He's got it. Victor chuckled. That he does. Tessa leaned back slightly, gaze following the kids. You always come to these games? Every Saturday, he said. Rain, sleet, heat, you name it. She turned to him. Do you ever get a break? He shrugged. Wouldn't call it work. Watching him play is the best part of my week. She tilted her head. And the rest of your week? Less exciting. I do cabinetry work when it comes. Sometimes warehouse shifts. Construction when I can find it. I pick up what I can, where I can. Tessa looked down, fingers tightening slightly around her cup. He caught it. Didn't mean to make it sound grim. I'm lucky, really. I get to see my kid grow up. A lot of dads don't. You ever want more than that? He hesitated, gaze fixed on the field.
Yeah.
Of course. I had plans. Me and my brother used to talk about starting a business. Furniture design. Custom pieces. Real craftsmanship. But after he passed, life shifted. He blinked once. And then Vaughn needed me. So, plans took a backseat. She turned toward him more fully now.
I'm sorry.
About your brother. Thanks, he said simply. He was the dreamer. I was the realist. Tessa hesitated. You don't strike me as someone who gave up on dreaming. Victor gave a quiet laugh.
No.
Just someone who put it on hold. The whistle blew, and the kids ran to gather around the coach. Victor stood and waved Vaughn over. The boy jogged up, cheeks flushed, hair sticking up in every direction. Did you see that kick? He asked, bouncing on his toes. Victor crouched to his level. You mean the one where you almost took out the referee? That was awesome, right? Unforgettable, Victor said, ruffling his hair. Tessa smiled as Vaughn turned to her. You're coming next week, right? She nodded. Wouldn't miss it. Victor watched her as she responded, something tightening in his chest. He was used to polite interest from teachers or other parents, but Tessa wasn't just being nice.
She meant it.
After the game, they walked together toward the parking lot. Victor carried Vaughn's duffel over his shoulder. Tessa matched his pace, her breath misting in the cool afternoon air. I was thinking, she began, I know someone who might be looking for custom cabinetry. They just bought a brownstone and want to restore it. Victor raised a brow. In this city? She nodded. It's a long shot, but I could put you in touch. He looked at her, expression guarded. You don't have to do that. I know, she said. But I want to. He studied her for a beat. Why? She met his gaze. Because you're good. And people who are good deserve chances. He didn't reply right away. Instead, he opened the truck door and helped Vaughn climb in. Once the boy was settled, Victor turned back to her. If you're serious, I'd be grateful. I am, she said. He nodded. All right then. She pulled a card from her coat pocket. That's my number. And the address of the brownstone. Victor took it, glancing down. T. Thorne Interiors? Tessa's stomach dropped. He looked up. You design interiors? Sometimes, she said. I help with sourcing, renovation planning. I consult. He nodded, satisfied. Sounds legit. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Thank you, he said. You're welcome. As she turned to go, he called after her. Tessa. She looked back. You didn't just cheer me up last week. You reminded me what hope feels like. Her throat tightened. Then we're even. Back in her apartment, she stared at the business card she'd given him. It wasn't a lie. T. Thorne Interiors was a real company, one she'd purchased anonymously under a holding firm last year to explore her creative side without the weight of her family name. But she hadn't expected to use it like this. That night, she stayed up late reviewing Victor's online presence. There wasn't much, just a few photos of handmade chairs, a blog post from 5 years ago about sustainable wood, and a local article on single-parent families. No flashy website, no curated branding. Just quiet, solid work. She closed the laptop and sat back, heart pounding. She should tell him.
Soon.
But not yet. The next morning, her assistant Vanessa knocked lightly on the office door. Your call with the board is in 10. Tessa nodded. Thanks. Vanessa hesitated. You okay? Tessa looked up.
Why?
You're smiling. That's new.
Tessa laughed.
Maybe I just had a good weekend. Later that week, Victor stood in front of the brownstone, hands in the pockets of his coat, staring up at the ivy-covered facade. He hadn't expected it to be this nice. The kind of place you saw in movies. He rang the bell. The door opened, and a woman in her 50s greeted him. You must be Victor, she said. Tessa said you'd be stopping by.
Come in.
He followed her through the foyer and into a kitchen with exposed beams and marble counters. She gestured to a long wall lined with empty shelving. She wants something clean, functional, but with warmth. She said you'd know what that meant. Victor nodded slowly, running his fingers along the edge of the counter. I can draw up some ideas, he said. Would she want to see samples? The woman smiled. She trusts you. Afterward, Victor walked back out onto the street, the card still in his pocket. He didn't know what to make of it. This job could cover Vaughn's school tuition for the year. Maybe more. It felt too good to be real. That night, he called her. "You weren't kidding," he said when she answered.
About what?
"This job. It's big."
She paused.
"Is that okay?" "It's more than okay. I don't know how to thank you."
You don't have to, she said.
"Just build something beautiful." He exhaled. "That I can do." They talked for half an hour after that. Not about the project. About music. About the best pizza slice in the city. About the time Vaughn tried to microwave a metal fork. When they hung up, Victor sat in the silence of his living room, staring at the ceiling. Something was happening. He felt it, but he didn't know what to call it yet. Tessa lay awake that night, staring at the shadows on her ceiling. He didn't know who she really was. Not yet. She'd meant to tell him. But every time she tried, she saw the look in his eyes when he spoke about trust, and the words stuck in her throat. She wasn't hiding to deceive him. She just wanted to be known for herself, not her name, not her money. But a voice in her head whispered a warning. You can't keep this up forever. And she knew it was right. One day, soon, she'd have to tell him everything. But tonight, she just wanted to hold on to the feeling of being seen not for her legacy, or her fortune, or her last name, but for the person she was becoming when she was with him. Victor stood in the middle of the brownstone's kitchen, the scent of sawdust lingering in the air as he stepped back from the unfinished shelving unit. He wiped his hands on the rag tucked into his back pocket, then leaned down to inspect the grain of the walnut panel he'd just fit into place. The light from the enormous windows spilled across the floor, catching the faint sheen of polish on the wood. It was the kind of job he used to dream about: custom design, complete creative freedom, and a client who didn't micromanage. Tessa hadn't shown up in person yet, but her notes had come through detailed and clear. She trusted him. That thought alone made his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with the work. He glanced at his phone. No message. No call. She hadn't come to Vaughn's last soccer game either. He hadn't asked why. He didn't want to seem like he expected anything. But he noticed. Back in her office, Tessa stared at the contract on her desk. Her legal team had finalized the merger. Thorne Industries was officially absorbing the design firm she'd used to help Victor. The same firm she'd created to escape her name was now being folded back into it. It would all be public soon. The press releases were scheduled. The headlines would follow, which meant Victor was going to find out. She hadn't meant for it to go this far, but she also hadn't meant to fall for him. Somewhere between Vaughn's soccer games and late-night phone calls about everything from jazz music to childhood fears, she'd started craving the sound of his voice before bed. She looked forward to his questions, his silences, his quiet confidence. And now it was all going to collapse. Vanessa appeared at the door, tablet in hand. "They've pushed the dedication gala to Friday night. The foundation wants you to make the keynote." Tessa ran a hand through her hair. "Great." Vanessa shifted her weight. Victor called. "He said he's finishing up the shelving tomorrow. Asked if you'd stop by." Tessa's breath caught. "Did he sound hopeful?" Vanessa said gently. Tessa nodded, eyes fixed on the window. "I'll go." The next day, she showed up at the brownstone just after noon. She wore jeans and a faded sweatshirt, sunglasses tugged low. No driver. No entourage. She knocked twice on the front door. Victor opened it. His shirt clung to his back, sawdust clinging to his forearms. A pencil was tucked behind his ear. He looked startled for a moment, then a slow smile spread across his face. "You came." "I said I would," she said, stepping inside. He moved aside to let her in. "Didn't think I'd see you again. I've been tied up." He gestured toward the kitchen. "Come look." She followed him in, heart hammering. The shelves were stunning. Clean lines, curved edges, rich wood that looked like it had lived 100 years already. She ran her fingers along the surface without speaking. I wanted it to feel like something you'd keep forever, he said. Not just install and forget. She turned to him. It does. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, an ache, a recognition, a knowing. He cleared his throat. Vaughn keeps asking when he's going to see you again. Her voice wavered. I miss him too. Victor stepped closer. What happened? She hesitated, then forced the words out. I haven't been honest with you. He frowned.
About what?
She looked past him, toward the light falling across the floor. About who I am. He waited. I didn't lie, she said. I just left some things out. Victor crossed his arms. All right. I'm not just someone who consults on interiors, she continued. I own the firm, and a lot of other things. His brow furrowed. What are you saying? She swallowed. My name's Tessa Thorne, of Thorne Industries. He blinked once, then again, as in yes. The silence between them stretched. He took a step back. So you've been watching me? Testing me?
No.
I didn't know who you were when we met. And after I found out, I didn't want to lose what we had. His voice was quiet, but steady. What exactly do we have, Tessa? She stepped toward him. Something real. At least, I thought it was. I know I should have told you sooner, but I didn't know how. Victor stared at her, jaw tight. I've been pouring everything I have into this project, believing I'd earned it. That maybe, for once, someone saw what I could do. I did, she said quickly. I do. That's why I hired you. He laughed once, bitter. You didn't hire me. You gave me a favor.
No.
I gave you a chance. You took it and turned it into something beautiful. I didn't make that happen, you did. He looked away, pacing once across the room. Do you know how humiliating this is? It wasn't meant to be. He faced her again. I've spent years trying to raise my son without help, without shortcuts. And now I find out the one person I trusted gave me both without asking. Tessa's voice cracked. I never wanted to undermine you. I fell for you. And I didn't know how to tell you without losing you. He stared at her. You should have told me the truth. She nodded, tears stinging her eyes. I know. I need time, he said, voice rough. I understand. She turned and walked out, the door clicking shut behind her. That night, Victor sat on the couch, Vaughn asleep beside him, one arm flung across his chest. He couldn't stop playing it all back, her voice, her face when she said his name, the way she'd looked at his work like it mattered. He'd trusted her, and she'd trusted him back, in her own way. But it didn't erase the sting of feeling like a project instead of a partner. Across the city, Tessa stood in front of the mirror in her penthouse suite, the lights of the skyline glittering behind her. Her gown for the gala hung untouched on the rack. She couldn't bear the thought of smiling for cameras, of shaking hands while her heart felt like it had shattered. Vanessa entered quietly. The car's downstairs. Tessa didn't move. I can cancel, Vanessa offered. Tessa shook her head.
No.
I'll go. She walked into the ballroom 2 hours later, cameras flashing, reporters calling her name. But all she saw was the space beside her. Empty. Victor didn't show. Not the next day. Not the next week. The brownstone was finished. The shelves stood perfect and untouched. And still he didn't call. Until the envelope arrived. It was hand-delivered to her office. A simple manila folder, no note. Inside, a photo. The shelves he'd built, filled with books, framed pictures, and a single hand-carved wooden box. On the back of the photo, one sentence written in pencil. You made me want to dream again. Tessa clutched the photo to her chest, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. She grabbed her coat, heart racing. She was done waiting. She had one more chance to make it right. This time, she wasn't going to waste it. Tessa stood outside the modest duplex on West 87th, her heels silent against the salted sidewalk, breath catching in the frigid air. The building was older, clean but worn like Victor himself. She hadn't called ahead. She didn't know if he'd answer. But she couldn't keep waiting for the perfect moment to fix what she'd broken. Some things had to be faced head-on, even if they terrified you. She raised her hand and knocked, heart pounding like it might tear through her ribs. After a long pause, the door creaked open. Victor stood there, Vaughn beside him in mismatched socks and a superhero t-shirt, his curls even more chaotic than usual. The boy's face lit up when he saw her. Tessa. She crouched automatically, arms opening. Hey, buddy. Vaughn crashed into her, wrapping his arms around her neck. She pressed her face to his shoulder, eyes burning. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed that little heartbeat against her chest. Victor didn't say anything. She stood slowly, meeting his gaze. Can we talk? He hesitated, then stepped back, letting the door swing wider.
Come in.
The apartment was small but warm, filled with lived-in comfort. A laundry basket sat by the couch, and a drawing was taped crookedly to the fridge. She recognized the shelves on the wall beside the TV, sleek oak with hand-carved brackets. He'd made them himself. Want something to drink? He asked without looking at her. She shook her head.
I'm okay.
Vaughn tugged on Victor's arm. Can I play my game? Victor gave a short nod. Go ahead. Headphones. The boy bounded toward the corner where a tablet and headset were waiting. The moment the headphones slipped over his ears, silence settled. I got your photo, she said softly. Victor leaned against the edge of the kitchen counter, arms folded. That box in the picture? I made that for my brother. Never finished it until last week. She nodded, throat tight. I didn't send it to guilt you, he said. I just needed you to know I wasn't angry anymore. Her breath caught. You weren't answering. I thought I'd lost you. I needed time. Perspective. A lot of things. She stepped closer. Did it help? He exhaled through his nose. Some. She hesitated. Victor, I didn't just fall for your work. I fell for you. For the way you care. For how you look at your son like he's the whole sky. For how you made me feel seen when I was trying to disappear. He didn't interrupt. He didn't move. I know I should have told you earlier. But I wasn't hiding who I was to manipulate you. I was trying to find out who I was without everything attached to my name. He looked at her then, finally. Did you figure it out? She nodded once.
Yes.
And I don't want to go back to the woman I was before I met you. Victor's jaw shifted. You live in a world I don't belong in, Tessa. I can't offer you penthouses or galas or private jets. I never wanted any of that from you, she said. You offer me honesty when I didn't know how to give it. You offered me peace when I was drowning in noise. You offered me a place I could be myself. She stepped closer. Do you hate me? His eyes dropped to the floor.
No.
I never did. Then what's stopping you? He lifted his gaze again, softer now. I was scared. That you'd wake up one day and realize I wasn't enough. That you'd outgrow this me. Tessa's eyes brimmed. Then let me be scared too. But let's be scared together. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Victor crossed the distance between them in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. She folded into him like she'd been holding her breath for weeks because she had. The moment his hand slid up her back and settled at her neck, she knew she was home. He pulled back just enough to look at her. I don't have a ring. I don't even have a savings account. She smiled through tears. I have enough rings for both of us and more money than I'll ever need. But I've never had what you give me. Victor touched her cheek. I love you. Tessa's breath hitched. I love you too. He kissed her with the urgency of a man who'd nearly lost everything. It wasn't polished or perfect, but it was real.
Raw.
Earned. When they pulled apart, Vaughn was standing 3 feet away, watching them with wide eyes. "Are you my new mom now?" Victor blinked. "Whoa, buddy, let's slow down." Tessa crouched down, brushing a curl from Vaughn's forehead. "Only if you want me to be." Vaughn considered this seriously. "Can we still have waffles on Saturdays?"
She grinned.
"Absolutely." "Then okay," he said, and hugged her again. Later that week, Victor stood in front of the gleaming double doors of the Thorne Industries boardroom, wearing a freshly tailored navy suit that Tessa had insisted on buying without a price tag, of course. His tie was crooked, his hands twitchy. Tessa stepped beside him, dressed in a charcoal gray pantsuit that made her look like she ruled the world. She took his hand. "They're not here to judge you," she said. "They're here to meet the man I trust with my life." He raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of pressure." "You'll survive." The doors opened. Inside, a dozen executives looked up as they entered. Tessa walked to the head of the table like she was born for it, but when she introduced Victor, her voice softened. "This is Victor Ross. He'll be leading the new design initiative for our foundation housing project. He's built more with his hands than most of us have built with an entire team. And he's the reason I believe this company can do more than just succeed. It can matter." Victor didn't fumble, didn't flinch. He spoke clearly, confidently about sustainable design, dignity in affordable housing, and creating spaces that uplift people instead of trapping them. By the time he finished, the room was silent. Then applause broke out. Tessa reached for his hand under the table and squeezed once. He squeezed back. That evening, she took him and Vaughn to a rooftop garden above the city. A string quartet played softly in the background. Lanterns glowed like fireflies between the olive trees. A table for 3 had been set with crystal glasses and a meal prepared by a private chef. Victor looked around, stunned. "You did all this?" "I wanted to celebrate," she said. "You're not just in my life anymore, Victor. You're part of it." He looked at the garden, the lights, the skyline, and then at her. "I like you better in sneakers and bad coffee shops," he murmured. She leaned close. "Then let's never stop going to them." Vaughn tugged on Victor's sleeve. "Can I have 2 desserts?" Victor opened his mouth, but Tessa cut in. "Yes." Victor chuckled. "This is going to be a problem. Only if you say no to waffles again." They sat down together, the 3 of them. A family, not by blood, but by choice. By love. And for the first time in years, Tessa didn't feel like she was pretending. She didn't feel like she had to be anyone else. She was Tessa, Victor's partner, Vaughn's maybe mom, a woman who had everything and finally knew what mattered most. Victor leaned in as dessert arrived. "So, I've been thinking." "That sounds dangerous." He ignored her. "When we do get married," her heart skipped. "Can we do it somewhere small? Just us, Vaughn, and maybe a few close friends." She smiled. "You want to marry me?" "I already do," he said. "I've just got to catch up to your world."
"You don't," she said.
"You already gave me something no one else ever could." He tilted his head. "What's that?" "A reason to stop running." He reached across the table and took her hand. "Then let's stay right here." And they did. Together. The scent of sawdust was long gone, replaced by fresh paint and lemon polish. Victor stood at the front of the newly opened Thorne Community Design Center, one hand resting on the back of a handcrafted bench he'd built himself. The space was buzzing. Volunteers moved between stations, families wandered through the open floor plan, and a group of teens circled a design table where architectural models were displayed like works of art. He leaned slightly toward Tessa, who stood beside him in a sleeveless cream blouse and dark slacks, her hair pulled back into a soft twist that revealed a delicate diamond stud in each ear, modest by her standards, but still glowing. "You think they're actually going to use this place?" he asked, watching a group of local students laugh as they tested out the height-adjustable workstations. Tessa didn't take her eyes off the room.
"No."
"I think they're going to take it over. make it better, and threatened to lock us out of our own building out of pure teenage rebellion. Victor gave a quiet chuckle, the sound low and warm in his chest.
Good.
That's what I want. You did this, she said, turning to him. You brought every part of it to life. We did this, he corrected. You gave it legitimacy. I gave it calluses. She touched the edge of the bench. You gave it soul. He turned to face her fully. You know, you're a terrible liar. I'm not lying, she said, eyes meeting his. You've built something that's going to outlive all of us. His hand found hers, fingers lacing through her palm. Still think I'm going to wake up one morning and find out this was a dream. You're not dreaming, she said. You're building. And this is just the beginning. A flashbulb popped from across the room. A photographer from one of the city's lifestyle magazines motioned for them to move closer together. Victor leaned slightly toward Tessa, but when the camera clicked, it wasn't the polished shot the magazine would end up using that mattered. It was the glance they exchanged after the one that said, "This is real. This is us." Later that night, long after the last guest left and the lights were dimmed, they walked hand in hand through the bare halls. The space that had been filled with movement and sound was now quiet, humming only with the occasional creak of settling wood. Victor paused near the front entrance. I've been thinking about something. Tessa tilted her head. Dangerous. Serious, he said. I want you to move in. She blinked. Into the design center? That's a little public for my taste. He gave her a look. Into my place. With me. And Vaughn. Tessa's heart skipped. Are you sure? I've been sure since the moment you stood in my living room and told me you wanted this life. You already feel like home. I just want to make it official. She looked at him for a long moment before answering. Then yes. Yes, I want that. And, he added, slipping his hand into his pocket, I want to make something else official too. Her breath caught as he pulled out a small, carved wooden box. I didn't buy a ring. I made one, he said, opening the lid to reveal a slim gold band with a single, pale sapphire set into the center. I wanted to give you something built with my own hands. Something no one else has touched. Tessa pressed her fingers to her lips, eyes stinging. I know it's not traditional, he said, watching her closely. She shook her head. It's perfect. He took her hand and slipped the ring onto her finger. It settled there like it had always belonged. I'm not going to promise you a perfect life, he said, but I'll promise you an honest one. One where we fight fair, love hard, and build something that lasts. Tessa pulled him into a kiss that was deep and slow, as if she had all the time in the world.
Because now she did.
You've already given me more than I ever knew I needed, she murmured against his lips. They left the design center in silence, the ring catching the streetlight as she slipped her arm through his. A month later, they stood beneath a canopy of olive trees in the rooftop garden where they'd once had dinner. But this time, there were no violins, no guests, no press. Just the two of them, Vaughn standing proudly between them, holding a small pillow with the rings resting atop it. Victor wore the same navy suit. Tessa wore a soft ivory dress that fell to her ankles, simple and elegant, with no designer label. Just fabric she liked, and a cut that made her feel like herself. The officiant was a retired architect who taught design workshops at the center. He kept the ceremony short, but heartfelt. When it came time for vows, Victor spoke first. I never thought I'd get a second chance. But you walked into that café like a storm I didn't know I needed. You reminded me that love isn't about rescuing someone, it's about standing beside them while they rescue themselves. I vow to stand beside you, always, and build whatever life you want, brick by brick. Tessa's voice was steady, but her eyes shimmered. I was drowning in a world that only saw my name, my money, my legacy.
But you saw me.
Not the version I polished. Just me. I vow to hold on to that, to protect it, to never forget who we were before the world saw us together. You're not just my partner. You're my piece. Vaughn handed them their rings, Victor's a matte black band with a wood inlay from the first bench they built together, Tessa's the same gold band he'd carved that day in the apartment. They kissed, slow and sure, the city sprawling around them like a promise. Afterward, they danced on the rooftop under strings of soft lights and ate lemon cake with buttercream frosting Vaughn had insisted on. When the boy fell asleep curled up on a lounge chair, Victor carried him inside while Tessa wrapped his jacket around her shoulders and watched the skyline. Victor returned, sliding his arms around her from behind.
We did it, he said.
We're doing it, she corrected. He rested his chin on her shoulder. Think we'll make it? I think we already have. They stood there until the stars blinked into view, quiet and steady above them. In the weeks that followed, life didn't slow down, but it fit. Tessa moved into the apartment, her designer shoes sharing closet space with Victor's work boots. Vaughn started calling her T at home and Mom at school. The design center expanded its programming, and Victor took on a mentorship role, teaching kids how to build furniture from reclaimed materials. Tessa stepped back from the Thorne board, choosing instead to focus on the foundation. She and Victor created a grant program for underrepresented artisans, and every month they hosted a community dinner in the garden above the center. One evening, as the sun dipped below the buildings and laughter echoed from the streets below, Tessa sat beside Victor on the bench he'd made a year earlier, the same one that now lived in the garden under the olive trees. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you ever miss your old life? He shook his head. Not for a second. She smiled. Me neither. They didn't need champagne or yachts or headlines. They had each other. They had Vaughn. And they had a life they'd built together, imperfect, honest, and completely, wildly, beautifully theirs.